Picture a world where the very sky is falling, not as gentle drops of water or soft flakes of snow, but as billions of glittering diamonds sinking endlessly through a lightless, crushing ocean. This is no terrestrial fantasy, but the hidden, physical reality of a colossal ice giant drifting silently at the extreme, frozen edge of our solar system. It is a place of profound, terrifying extremes, where the familiar earthly laws of chemistry are completely rewritten by unimaginable pressure and ancient, biting cold. Imagine an entire, sprawling planetary system, complete with stealthy, dark rings and a family of battered moons, violently knocked entirely onto its side by a primordial apocalypse. Instead of spinning comfortably like a top, this strange, massive sphere rolls endlessly through the freezing vacuum, leading with its poles in a dizzying sideways waltz around a distant miniature sun. Such a bizarre, unnatural orientation plunges half the world into an agonizingly long, pitch-black winter that lasts for over 4 earthly decades without a single sunrise. Deep within those sprawling shadows lies a profound thermal paradox that continues to completely baffle those who dedicate their lives to studying the stars. While other massive giant planets burn fiercely with the leftover radiant heat of their violent creation, this tranquil orb radiates almost no internal warmth into the surrounding empty vacuum. It exists as a true slumbering giant, locked in a permanent state of cryogenic hibernation that leaves its upper atmosphere eerily still, deeply calm and perfectly featureless to the searching eye. Surprisingly, the immense scale and silent violence of the outer cosmos cannot reach you here in the quiet, grounded sanctuary of your room, leaving you completely removed from the freezing vacuum and entirely secure in the soft, familiar embrace of your own bed. You are safe. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep. Let your own breathing slow and deepen to match the steady, heavy and infinitely patient orbit of this frozen world as we begin our slow journey outward into the quiet dark. We are leaving the busy, frantic terrestrial noise of the daylight entirely behind, drifting smoothly and effortlessly toward a massive, silent celestial enigma suspended in the deep, starry black. Bathing in a cool, serene wash of pale blue light, the planet reveals itself not as a turbulent giant, but as a tranquil sphere of pristine aquamarine. Bathing in a cool, serene wash of pale blue light, the planet reveals itself not as a turbulent giant, but as a tranquil sphere of pristine aquamarine. This unbroken, mesmerizing hue dominates the entire globe, a masterclass in cosmic light scattering across billions of kilometers of empty space. As sunlight pierces the uppermost layers of the atmosphere, it encounters a vast, invisible ocean of methane gas that hungrily absorbs the red wavelengths of the solar spectrum. What remains to bounce back into the void is a brilliant ethereal blue, giving the world its signature jewel-like appearance. This is no solid surface reflecting the sun, but a deep, gaseous illusion built entirely of filtered light. The resulting glow is soft and hypnotic, masking the tremendous planetary machinery operating just beneath the cloud tops. Floating in the deep dark, this radiant azure expanse feels entirely isolated, a singular drop of frozen colour suspended in the absolute black of the outer solar system. The sheer uniformity of the tint creates a profoundly calming visual silence, drawing the observer into its placid, luminous depths. Deep within this upper atmosphere, the tranquil appearance belies a realm of punishing, unimaginable extremes. Temperatures in this pale blue layer plunge to a staggering -224 degrees Celsius, a cold so absolute it fundamentally alters the behaviour of matter. This chilling reality makes it the coldest planetary atmosphere in the entire solar system, surpassing even the freezing depths of worlds situated much further from the sun. Descending through the hazy thermosphere, the biting frost tightens its grip, stripping away any lingering warmth inherited from its primordial creation. Heat is almost entirely absent here, leaving the scattered blue light to illuminate a silent, cryogenic wasteland of swirling gases. At these brutal temperatures, molecules slow to a sluggish crawl, their kinetic energy nearly extinguished by the vast frigid emptiness. Such profound cold creates a paradox of atmospheric dynamics, where the lack of thermal energy contributes to the planet's eerily quiet outer face. The very air is suspended in a state of perpetual icy stasis, locking the azure skies into a frozen, timeless slumber. Drifting silently through these frigid upper layers are elusive clouds woven from hydrogen sulfide, completely hidden within the soft blue glow. These pale wisps of gas circulate stealthily above the deeper methane layers, tracing invisible currents in the profound cold. If one could survive the crushing pressures and absolute zero temperatures, breathing in this atmosphere would immediately assault the senses with the pungent, unmistakable scent of rotten eggs. This noxious compound forms a distinct cloud deck, separating itself from the other chemical bands sinking into the planetary interior. The presence of sulfur adds a layer of harsh reality to the otherwise serene, pastel visual aesthetic, contrasting the planet's outward beauty with its toxic breath. Upwellings from the warmer depths occasionally push fresh material into this deck, replenishing the odorous haze before it freezes and falls back down. Understanding this chemical makeup required decades of spectroscopic analysis, as the planet fiercely guards the secrets of its atmospheric layers. Now, we know that beneath the inviting aquamarine shell lies a vast, churning reservoir of hazardous gases, beautifully illuminated but lethal to the touch. To the naked eye, the planet presents an impossibly smooth canvas, but specialized tools reveal a hidden, complex architecture. Gentle banding patterns, infinitely subtler than the violent swirling stripes of Jupiter, encircle the globe in parallel, whispered rings. These elusive atmospheric rivers only emerge from the uniform blue when viewed through sensitive infrared filters, stripping away the blinding glare of scattered sunlight. Once the infrared spectrum is accessed, the serene wash of pale blue light gives way to a dynamic map of atmospheric pressure zones and shifting temperatures. These bands stretch across the equator and the poles, delineating vast hidden storm systems that lack the contrasting clouds needed to be seen in visible light. The muted nature of these stripes is a direct result of the planet's deep freeze, which suppresses the vibrant cloud formations found on warmer gas giants. Careful observation reveals that these faint bands are surprisingly orderly, marching in lockstep with the planet's dizzying rotation. They serve as a ghostly reminder that even the quietest worlds harbour vast, moving oceans of air, invisible to the unaided eye but undeniably present. Beneath the tranquil veneer, this immense gaseous shell is engaged in a furious, invisible race against itself. The outer atmosphere actually rotates significantly faster than the hidden, solid core lying thousands of kilometers below the cloud tops. High-altitude winds sweep mercilessly across the planet, achieving terrifying speeds of up to 900 kilometers per hour in a perpetual silent hurricane. This atmospheric overdrive is driven by the complex interplay of the planet's internal fluid dynamics and its rapid, tumbling rotation. Because the winds flow parallel to the equator, they shear against one another, creating zones of immense turbulence that remain masked by the thick methane smog. Travelling at these speeds, a storm system could circumnavigate the entire globe in a matter of hours, though the lack of visual markers makes this frantic motion nearly impossible to track. The sheer momentum of these atmospheric currents is staggering, considering the incredibly thin, freezing nature of the air. It is a world of furious kinetic energy completely decoupled from its visual stillness, a raging tempest disguised beneath a veil of pale, serene blue. Surprisingly, despite these howling supersonic winds, the visible surface remains entirely unblemished and nearly devoid of distinct weather systems. The planet presents a remarkably calm, almost painted face to the cosmos, defying the expectations set by every other giant world in our neighbourhood. There are no swirling great spots, no turbulent churning eddies, and no dramatic lightning storms illuminating the darkness. This pristine appearance is a consequence of the thick hazy smog that settles over the upper troposphere, acting as a soft focus lens over the entire globe. The extreme cold forces any condensing clouds deep into the atmosphere, burying the active weather layers beneath an opaque blanket of uniform gas. Consequently, the cool, serene wash of pale blue light is never interrupted by the messy reality of planetary meteorology. To gaze upon this world is to look at a perfect, undisturbed sphere of colour, suspended motionless in the black. It is a celestial illusion of absolute peace, a planetary facade that masterfully hides the furious, swirling reality of its invisible storms. Journeying to this remote realm, sunlight must traverse an unimaginably vast distance, crossing billions of kilometres of empty, freezing void. It takes nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes for a single photon to travel from the blazing surface of the sun to illuminate these pale, high-altitude clouds. By the time the light arrives, it has lost its searing intensity, arriving as a faint, diluted glow that barely warms the top of the atmosphere. This extended transit time isolates the planet in a kind of temporal delay, viewing a version of the sun that is already hours in the past. The sheer scale of this distance dilutes the solar energy so completely that the resulting daylight is comparable to a dusky, twilight evening on Earth. Yet, this weak illumination is entirely sufficient to ignite the methane haze, casting that signature, cool blue light across the endless cloud deck. The isolation of this orbital path ensures the planet remains locked in a perpetual, dimly lit deep freeze. It is a world that exists at the very fringes of the sun's influence, bathed in ancient, exhausted light. Delving slightly below the visible blue ceiling, the atmospheric chemistry becomes an intricate, murky soup. Trace amounts of water and ammonia begin to mingle heavily with the dominant methane, combining under increasing pressures to form a complex heavy chemical smog. This dense particulate haze acts as a planetary curtain, thoroughly blurring the deeper layers and preventing any optical telescopes from peering into the abyss. The interaction between these freezing compounds creates a stratified ocean of varying densities, where ice crystals of ammonia form, sink, and evaporate in endless slow-motion cycles. The smog absorbs whatever faint sunlight manages to penetrate the upper methane, creating a dark, twilight zone where visibility drops to absolute zero. It is within this obscuring layer that the serene blue transition into the crushing, lightless black of the interior begins. This chemical mixture is vital to the planet's heat retention and overall atmospheric structure, wrapping the hidden depths in a thick, insulating blanket. The smog ensures that the planet's true face remains an enigma, shielding its churning, supercritical fluid oceans from the prying eyes of the universe. The mind struggles to comprehend the sheer size of this blank canvas, a gas giant massive enough to swallow dozens of Earths, yet as visually simple as a polished gemstone. Floating above it, the cool, serene wash of blue light entirely fills the peripheral vision, creating a profound sense of vertigo and isolation. The uniformity of the planet acts almost like a mirror, reflecting only the silence and emptiness of the surrounding space. It is a hauntingly beautiful sight, a testament to the elegant simplicity that extreme cold and chemical homogeneity can produce. The absolute stillness of the view forces the observer to rely entirely on instruments to prove the world below is actually spinning. Eventually, the illusion of perfect stillness was broken by humanity's first and only direct visitor to this distant realm. Careful, sustained observations by the Voyager, 2 spacecraft as it sped past revealed the faintest, most fleeting of imperfections marring the pastel atmosphere. By pushing its imaging sensors to their absolute limits, the probe captured images of subtle cloud shadows skimming silently across the deep blue haze. These transient white wisps were the first visual proof of convective weather, pushing through the suppressing smog, tiny upwellings of warmer methane ice. They appeared as ghostly apparitions, surviving for mere hours before being torn apart by the invisible 900 km/h winds raging at that altitude. Catching a glimpse of these clouds required perfect lighting angles, utilising the faint shadows they cast on the cloud deck below to highlight their existence. These rare, fleeting blemishes only served to emphasise the overwhelming dominance of the calm blue expanse. They were a brief, whispered confession from a world that otherwise guards its secrets behind an impenetrable wall of cool, serene light. Beyond that impenetrable wall of cool, serene light lies a dizzying kinetic reality that defies all celestial logic within our local neighbourhood. Unlike any other massive world drifting through the outer darkness, this colossal ice giant does not spin comfortably like a top upon a vertical axis. Instead, it moves with the disorienting, unsettling sensation of rolling along an invisible orbital path, completely knocked onto its side by ancient forces. Astrophysicists measure this extreme axial tilt at an astonishing 97.77 degrees, a severe inclination that fundamentally alters the planet's relationship with gravity, momentum, and solar radiation. To truly envision this bizarre motion, one must completely discard the familiar image of a spinning globe and picture a massive frozen barrel tumbling endlessly along a curved, invisible track. This sideways orientation ensures that the entire globe experiences the cosmos from an entirely skewed horizontal perspective, perpetually leading with its poles. The sheer momentum required to maintain this tumbling waltz through the frigid void is almost impossible for the human mind to fully comprehend. Moving steadily through the outer dark, the planet appears to bowl its way around the sun, an anomaly of momentum that challenges the orderly mechanics of the solar system. The sheer scale of this tilted orbit forces observers to reconsider everything they thought they knew about planetary motion. Such a bizarre, tumbling orientation is not a peaceful consequence of natural planetary formation, but the lingering, silent scar of an unimaginable cosmic catastrophe. Astronomers strongly suspect that during the chaotic, violent infancy of the solar system, a colossal collision fundamentally shattered the planet's original upright posture. A wandering rogue protoplanet, estimated to be roughly the size of our own Earth, is believed to have slammed into the nascent ice giant with world-breaking kinetic force. This cataclysmic impact would have released an apocalyptic wave of destructive energy, instantly vaporizing huge swathes of atmospheric material and forever altering the planet's internal rotational momentum. The sheer, unfathomable violence of the event physically knocked the entire world over, forcing it to violently adopt the strange sideways tilt we observe from afar today. Debris from the shattered impactor and the planet's own pulverized outer layers would have formed a temporary superheated disk of crushed rock, boiling ice, and glowing gas. Over billions of lonely years, the physical scars of this ancient violence were slowly buried beneath the thick blue atmosphere, effectively hiding the profound trauma of its birth. Yet the rolling, tumbling motion remains a silent, perpetual testament to that singular day of absolute destruction in the deep past. It serves as a haunting reminder that the seemingly serene heavens were once an incredibly violent, unpredictable battlefield of colliding, dying worlds. Because of this severe, unyielding tilt, the basic experience of daylight and darkness on this world is stretched into an agonizingly prolonged psychological marathon. For almost half a century, one specific pole is angled directly toward the distant sun, bathed in a continuous pale and unyielding illumination that never wavers. This geometry dictates that a single day at the polar region lasts for 42 Earth years, a bizarre frozen extreme where the sun simply refuses to set. Such extreme, drawn-out seasons create an environment where the earthly concept of a normal day completely breaks down, replaced by generational shifts in light and temperature. As your chest rises and falls with your own steady rhythmic breathing, consider the strange, prolonged stillness of a 42-year night. It is a rhythm of time so impossibly vast and slow that it completely dwarfs our terrestrial understanding of passing hours and fleeting days. Navigating toward the equatorial regions during the absolute height of a polar solstice reveals an even more disorienting, mesmerizing trick of celestial mechanics. Here, the sun does not cross the sky from east to west in a familiar arc, but instead remains pinned incredibly low on the hazy horizon. It traces a tight, maddening circle just above the cloud tops, a pale, distant spotlight that endlessly sweeps the perimeter without ever managing to fully rise or completely set. The resulting visual effect is a dizzying, slow-motion carousel of light as the sun stubbornly traces the edge of the world day after day, year after year. It casts a hypnotic, inescapable circular spell over the entire equator, a relentless cycle that only slowly unwinds as the planet inches along its massive 84-year orbit. Standing in this bizarre twilight zone would thoroughly challenge the senses, as the light circles endlessly without ever offering the psychological release of true enveloping darkness. Logic would firmly dictate that a pole subjected to 4 decades of continuous, uninterrupted solar radiation would inevitably become the hottest region on the entire globe. Yet, in a bizarre, baffling defiance of basic thermodynamic expectations, the equator of this sideways giant inexplicably remains warmer than the sunlit polar regions. This confounding temperature inversion is one of the most enduring, frustrating mysteries hidden beneath the planet's calm, pastel blue exterior. Astrophysicists deeply struggle to understand exactly what internal mechanisms could possibly distribute heat so inefficiently, or perhaps so miraculously efficiently, that the sun-baked pole remains in a deep freeze. Some compelling theories suggest a complex sluggish circulation system deep within the fluid mantle that actively transports thermal energy away from the poles and tightly concentrates it at the planetary waist. Others propose that the ancient, cataclysmic impact permanently disrupted the internal heat flow, creating a massive thermal barrier that stubbornly traps energy near the equator. Whatever the hidden, internal cause may be, it results in a massive whirl that simply refuses to obey the standard observable rules of solar heating. It is a profound, chilling paradox where 40 uninterrupted years of daylight still cannot manage to conquer the deep, internal chill of the polar atmosphere. The planet stubbornly writes its own rules in the dark, confounding the expectations of every thermal model. Envision the entire localized system of this planet, not just as a solitary globe, but as a massive tilted bullseye suspended motionless in the interstellar void. When the world was knocked violently onto its side, it did not go alone, dragging its entire retinue of delicate rings and orbiting moons into the exact same skewed orientation. This immense, complex collection of rocky debris and shattered ice orbits perfectly around the planet's equator, meaning the entire system uniformly shares the dizzying 97-degree tilt. To an approaching interstellar observer, the rings do not cut horizontally across the sky like those of its majestic neighbours, but instead stand vertically, forming a colossal, framing halo around the planet. The accompanying moons weave their way meticulously through these vertical tracks, diving from the extreme northern hemisphere down to the southern in a beautifully disorienting orbital dance. This arrangement creates a miniature self-contained solar system that operates entirely on a sheer 90-degree offset from the flat plane of the rest of the planets. The shared, extreme tilt heavily implies that the rings and moons formed long after the Great Collision, condensing slowly from the vast cloud of shattered debris left in its wake. They are the frozen, silent children of that ancient violence, forever locked into the tumbling, rolling motion of their parent world. It is a breathtakingly strange, beautiful architecture, a cosmic archery target spinning sideways through the freezing interstellar cold. Because of the planet's immense sweeping distance from the sun, the transition between these bizarre tilted seasons happens with agonizing, nearly imperceptible slowness. Moving at a sluggish, plodding pace along its vast orbital track, the world takes an entire, long human lifetime to complete a single sweeping journey around the Sun. This means the gradual shift from the continuous daylight of a polar summer to the shifting twilight of a planetary equinox requires over 2 decades of patient, silent waiting. Generations of dedicated human astronomers can live their entire lives and pass away after watching only a single, slow season unfold across the pale blue atmosphere. The changing angle of the distant Sun creeps across the hazy latitudes at a glacial pace, gradually and imperceptibly shifting the thermal balance of the upper cloud decks. It is a massive planetary clock that ticks in heavy decades, operating on a timescale completely alien to the rapid, frenetic pace of life on our own rocky sphere. As you rest peacefully here, feeling the steady, rhythmic beat of your own pulse, try to imagine a world where time moves with such immense heavy deliberation. The slow, creeping crawl of the Terminator line separating atmospheric light and dark is an absolute masterclass in cosmic patience and inevitability. It forces those who study it to adopt a grand, generational perspective, carefully passing the torch of observation down through the years just to witness a single planetary spring. While the impossibly long solstices are characterized by an eerie, frozen calm, the eventual equinoxes bring brief, chaotic periods of violent atmospheric upheaval. As the planet's long orbit finally brings the distant Sun directly over the equator, the strange sideways geometry allows sunlight to rapidly heat regions that have been frozen solid for decades. This sudden, shocking influx of thermal energy triggers explosive atmospheric convection, violently waking the dormant skies from their 40-year slumber with massive swirling storms. These sudden, brilliant weather systems erupt with terrifying speed, punching powerfully through the serene blue smog to form highly reflective, towering storm clouds. They're aggressively driven by the intense, newly formed temperature gradients created when the boundary between light and dark sweeps rapidly across the previously frozen globe. For a few brief, chaotic years, the usually featureless planet transforms into a dynamic, tempestuous world, heavily scarred by roaring cyclones and high-altitude shear winds. This chaotic disruption thoroughly shatters the usual calm, proving that the planet's quiet exterior is merely a temporary frozen phase in a massive, decades-long meteorological cycle. Once the Sun moves past the equator and begins its long, slow journey toward the opposite pole, the energy fades and the furious storms slowly dissipate. The world then peacefully returns to its smooth, featureless state, tucking its violent weather away for another 40 years of silent slumber. Gazing carefully at this distant orb from Earth over the span of many decades offers astronomers a slowly shifting, mesmerizing light show of orbital mechanics. Because of the extreme, severe tilt, our perspective of the planet changes radically as it lumbers along its massive 84-year orbit around the distant Sun. At the absolute height of a planetary solstice, powerful telescopes see only a featureless pale blue pole, staring back at the inner solar system like a giant, blank, unblinking eye. However, as the long years bleed into decades and the planet slowly approaches an equinox, the viewing angle dramatically shifts, slowly revealing the hidden equatorial bands and the delicate vertical ring system. It gradually and gracefully turns its side to us, transitioning from a smooth, featureless disk into an edge-on alignment where the dark rings slice perfectly across its bright center. This slowly changing posture gives humanity a unique, three-dimensional understanding of a world that is otherwise impossibly distant and notoriously difficult to resolve clearly. The slow-motion rotation of its visual aspect is a beautifully predictable dance governed entirely by the unforgiving, mathematical laws of orbital mechanics. It serves as a striking visual reminder of the planet's long, lonely journey, acting as a constant but ever-changing target in the lenses of our largest observatories. Watching this profound transformation is like watching a magnificent celestial flower open and close, requiring the patience of a lifetime to see in its full glory. Ultimately, this peculiar sideways posture poses a profound, enduring challenge to our fundamental understanding of how planetary systems settle into stable, long-term orbits. Traditional mathematical models of solar system formation strongly suggest that planets should naturally condense and spin in roughly the same flat plane as their parent star. Yet, this tumbling, rolling giant defiantly breaks those established rules, proving that the final architecture of a solar system is often shaped by unpredictable, chaotic violence. Researchers are constantly forced to run complex supercomputer simulations, desperately trying to reconcile the planet's stable current orbit with the massive system-shattering trauma required to knock it completely over. The very existence of this sideways world suggests that early solar systems are wildly dangerous, untamed places where cosmic billiards can radically alter the fate of entire worlds in an instant. It makes us deeply question how many other sideways, broken or scarred planets might be drifting silently through the dark reaches of other distant star systems. As you let your mind completely settle, relaxing deeply into the quiet of your current space, allow the strange reality of this rolling ice giant to linger in your thoughts. It stands proudly as a beautiful, serene anomaly, a world that survived a fiery apocalypse only to spend eternity dancing sideways in the dark. It is a quiet, tilted paradox that forever changes how we look at the supposedly orderly spin of the night sky. That supposedly orderly spin of the night sky is profoundly complicated by a hidden, vertical architecture framing the rolling planet in absolute shadow. Encircling the frozen globe are 13 distinct concentric rings, perfectly aligned with the world's severe equatorial tilt. However, unlike the brilliant, highly reflective icy halos that easily catch the sun around other gas giants, this system is woven from surprisingly dark, soot-like materials. These somber ribbons absorb almost all the faint solar radiation that manages to reach them, reflecting practically no light back into the surrounding void. Their stealthy nature makes them a ghostly, elusive presence, a monumental planetary feature hiding in plain sight. They appear not as shining crowns, but as faint, dusty glints of crushed charcoal suspended in the eternal darkness. To drift alongside this massive structure is to witness a masterpiece of gravitational engineering painted in the blackest of inks. It is a shadowy labyrinth holding the planet in a tight, silent embrace. The sheer scale of these pitch-black rings adds a layer of gothic mystery to the already peculiar sideways world. Delving into the composition of this dark halo reveals a fascinating paradox of materials locked in a deep freeze. The individual particles making up the dense bands consist primarily of ordinary chunks of water ice, a substance that should theoretically sparkle brilliantly in the distant sunlight. Yet this pristine frozen water has been heavily contaminated and thoroughly darkened by a rich mixture of complex organic molecules over countless millennia. As you let your muscles sink deeper into your resting place, releasing the day's tension, imagine these icy fragments endlessly baking in the harsh cosmic radiation. This relentless exposure chemically alters the organics, slowly transforming them into a thick tar-like sludge that thoroughly coats every single tumbling boulder. The resulting dark veneer acts as a perfect camouflage, effectively swallowing photons and rendering the entire ring system nearly invisible to the naked searching eye. Only through the highly specialized vision of advanced infrared observatories does the true mass and complexity of this frozen, tar-coated rubble become apparent. It is a massive orbiting graveyard of blackened ice, silently tumbling through the endless freezing night. The stealthy nature of these materials perfectly matches the quiet, secretive personality of the tumbling ice giant they surround. At the very outermost edge of this darkened system, a single band known as the Epsilon Ring breaks the pattern by shining just a fraction brighter than its shadowy siblings. This specific ribbon of debris holds the vast majority of the entire ring system's mass, concentrated tightly into an incredibly dense, crowded track. Its relatively defined presence is not an accident of nature, but the direct result of an ongoing, masterful display of gravitational shepherding. Flanking this prominent band are two tiny, incredibly dense inner moons, Cordelia and Ophelia, acting as tireless, cosmic border collies. As these small celestial bodies race along their orbits, their combined gravitational influence pushes and pulls the tumbling ice, actively corralling the debris into a strict, tight formation. They forcefully prevent the edges of the Epsilon ring from spreading out and dissipating into the wider empty vacuum of space. Without the constant, vigilant patrol of these two shepherd moons, the brightest feature of this shadowy system would slowly smear into nothingness. Their invisible gravitational tethers create a sharp, dramatic boundary between the dense rubble and the completely empty void beyond. It is a perfectly balanced orbital waltz, where tiny worlds dictate the shape of a massive planetary halo. Moving inward from the Epsilon boundary, the architecture of the inner rings reveals an astonishingly delicate and fragile profile. Measuring only a tiny handful of kilometers wide, these individual tracks are incredibly narrow, looking more like finely drawn pencil lines than massive planetary features. This razor-thin geometry stands in sharp, dramatic contrast to the sprawling, majestic and broad disk systems found around neighbouring giant worlds. The stark narrowness of these bands suggests they are tightly constrained by forces we do not yet completely comprehend, perhaps guided by undiscovered embedded moonlets hidden within the debris. They're so remarkably thin that if one were to view them edge-on, they would completely vanish from sight, lacking any substantial vertical thickness. It is an architecture defined entirely by precise, extreme minimalism, a delicate tracing of dust and rock against the immense backdrop of the pale blue planet. Drifting through these tight corridors would require threading a needle through a chaotic storm of densely packed blackened ice. The tight boundaries offer absolutely no room for orbital deviation, forcing every single tumbling rock to adhere to a strict, inescapable pathway. Such precise celestial mechanics highlight the incredibly strict, unseen rules governing this sideways neighbourhood. Curiously, close examination of these tightly packed main bands reveals a complete, baffling absence of fine, microscopic dust. Unlike typical planetary rings that are choked with vast clouds of pulverized, powdery debris, these dense tracks consist almost entirely of large, macroscopic boulders and jagged chunks of ice. The smallest particles have been entirely swept away, leaving only the heaviest, most resilient fragments to continue the endless orbital march. Feel the steady, gentle rise and fall of your breath, a slow rhythm that mirrors the unseen, sweeping forces constantly cleansing this orbital space. Astrophysicists theorize that aerodynamic drag from the planet's extended invisible hydrogen corona acts as a subtle but relentless broom, slowly pulling the lightest dust down into the atmospheric abyss. Alternatively, powerful magnetic forces tumbling along with the planet's skewed field might physically eject the charged microscopic particles outward into deep space. Whatever the exact mechanism of removal, it leaves the main rings remarkably clean and starkly defined, stripped of the hazy glow that fine dust normally provides. It is an environment of brutal, unyielding sorting, where only the largest, heaviest pieces of darkened ice possess the momentum to survive. This unnatural cleanliness adds to the stark, ghostly aesthetic of the entire tumbling system. The sharp boundaries and lack of fine dust strongly imply a surprising truth. This entire dark halo is a relatively young addition to the planetary system. These bands are not a primordial ancient relic left over from the very dawn of the solar system, but the fresh wreckage of a much more recent cosmic tragedy. The pristine, defined edges simply could not have survived the chaotic, degrading forces of deep space for billions of long years. Astronomers firmly believe we are looking at the pulverized, shattered remains of a fully formed moon that strayed too close to the giant's gravitational well, ripped apart by overwhelming tidal forces, or perhaps completely annihilated by a high-speed impact from a rogue comet, this ill-fated world was instantly reduced to a massive cloud of shrapnel. The resulting debris rapidly spread out along the equatorial plane, forming the crisp, dark rings we observe today. This origin story paints a picture of sudden, absolute destruction occurring in a celestial neighbourhood previously thought to be frozen and completely dormant. The tumbling boulders are the silent, blackened bones of a murdered world, trapped forever in a gravitational purgatory. It is a sobering reminder that even in the quietest, most distant reaches of the dark, catastrophic violence can still radically reshape the heavens. Because of their incredibly dark, stealthy nature, the very existence of these rings remained completely hidden from humanity for centuries after the planet itself was discovered. Their sudden revelation relied entirely on a brilliant trick of the light and a healthy dose of observational luck, rather than any direct visual confirmation. Astronomers were intently watching a distant background star as the planet's path slowly carried the icy giant directly in front of it. Before the star could slip behind the planet's hazy atmosphere, its light suddenly began to blink out in a rapid staccato rhythm. This elegant indirect phenomenon known as a stellar occultation proved that something solid, yet completely invisible, was briefly blocking the starlight in a series of distinct bands. By meticulously timing exactly when the star flickered and vanished, mathematicians were able to perfectly map the location, width, and density of the unseen ring system. This clever method of discovery underscores the immense difficulty of studying an environment completely draped in absolute shadow. The rings literally announced their presence by casting fleeting, invisible silhouettes against the distant, starry backdrop. It was a moment of profound revelation, suddenly surrounding the smooth, pale blue globe with a complex hidden labyrinth of dark matter. While the main bands are famously devoid of microscopic particles, the vast, empty voids separating them tell an entirely different, highly transient story. Filling these broad gaps are impossibly faint, delicate sheets of extremely fine dust, creating a gossamer web that connects the denser tracts of rocky debris. These ethereal, dusty expanses are so incredibly thin that they barely register on even the most sensitive optical instruments, lingering like smoke in a completely still room. Notice how the tension slowly leaves your muscles, dissolving away much like these shifting ethereal curtains of dust, gracefully dissipating into the deep vacuum. Unlike the stable, heavy boulders of the primary bands, this microscopic material is constantly shifting, drifting, and completely vanishing over incredibly short periods of time. They are fed by the occasional violent collision of larger rocks, creating a temporary chaotic haze that is quickly swept away by atmospheric drag. This constant cycle of creation and destruction gives the empty spaces between the rings a dynamic, almost living quality. The dust sheets represent the fleeting, fragile breath of the ring system, briefly illuminating the dark gaps before returning to nothingness. It is a beautiful, transient layer of architecture completely hidden within the overarching shadowy structure. Venturing further out from the planet, the composition and visual nature of the debris begin to shift in striking, deeply unexpected ways. While the tight inner structure appears as a uniform, dark expanse, the much more tenuous, completely separate outer bands exhibit startling splashes of distinct hue. Careful analysis reveals that these distant diaphanous rings range in colour from a rusty, dusty red to a brilliant, shocking shade of vivid blue. This sudden injection of colour into an otherwise monochromatic system hints at wildly varying compositions of fresh, exposed ice and ancient, silicate rock. The blue band, in particular, is a profound rarity in planetary astronomy, mirroring the coloration of a similarly tinted, delicate outer ring surrounding the distant world of Saturn. Astrophysicists theorize that this blue tint is caused by microscopic particles of absolutely pure, uncontaminated water ice, violently shed by a tiny embedded moonlet. The stark contrast between the pitch-black inner rubble and the vibrant, colourful outer halos adds an incredible layer of aesthetic complexity to the tumbling system. It proves that the gravitational grip of the planet holds a remarkably diverse collection of planetary shrapnel. These distant, colourful bands act as a faint, beautiful outer boundary, marking the absolute edge of the rolling giant's immediate domain. To physically float among these crowded, tumbling debris fields would be an experience defined by a profound, almost oppressive, ghostly silence. Surrounded by millions of blackened rocks and jagged shards of contaminated ice, a visiting observer would witness a scene of incredible, unending violence without hearing a single sound. Here in the absolute freezing vacuum of deep space, acoustic waves simply cannot travel, rendering the most catastrophic collisions entirely mute. Massive dark boulders silently drift into one another, violently shattering into thousands of smaller jagged pieces in a brutal, continuous grinding process. Plumes of fresh, sparkling ice occasionally erupt from these silent impacts, catching the faint sunlight for just a moment before being immediately coated in the dark, tarry organics. It is a localized zone of total, unrelenting destruction, beautifully choreographed in a perfectly soundless slow-motion ballet of shattered matter. This eerie, silent violence is the true hidden nature of the seemingly serene horizontal rings framing the pale blue globe. The faint, dusty glint of crushed charcoal hides a turbulent, grinding mill of planetary debris constantly eating itself. It is a hauntingly beautiful, utterly lethal environment, a perfect paradox of absolute stillness and completely silent destruction wrapping the tilted world. The silent destruction wrapping the tilted world gives way to a poetic assembly of nearly 30 natural satellites, each a whispering ghost drifting through the outer dark. Rather than bearing the names of ancient Greek deities like their massive neighbours, these moons are christened after the immortal, whimsical characters found in the works of William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope. This choice imbues the freezing void with a sense of literary drama, as if the planet were the centre of a grand celestial stage for a play that has lasted billions of years. This nomenclature creates a bridge between the cold, mathematical reality of orbital mechanics and the warm human legacy of artistic creation and imaginative storytelling. It is as if the observers wanted to populate the lonely, frigid reaches of the outer solar system with the voices of poets and dreamers. Puck, Belinda, and Sycorax glide through the shadows, their very names carrying the weight of tragedies and comedies performed centuries ago on a distant rocky Earth. Every time a telescope tracks these moving specks of light against the velvet blackness, we're essentially reading a cosmic playbill written in frozen stone and ancient water. The names act as a soft cultural tether, reminding us that even the most distant and inhospitable corners of our universe are seen through the lens of our shared stories. This literary court serves as a sophisticated guard for the ice giant, turning a cold gravitational system into a haunting narrative masterpiece. Titania stands as the undisputed sovereign of this icy court, reigning as the largest companion within the complex orbital swarm. Her surface is a haunting map of ancient structural violence, heavily scarred by enormous canyons that slice through the crust like deep, jagged wounds in the dark. These chasm-like features, some stretching for many hundreds of kilometers, hint at a past where the moon's interior once expanded, tearing the outer shell asunder in a silent planetary scream. Expansive impact craters pockmark the terrain, their floors often filled with smooth, dark material that contrasts sharply against the brilliant white frost of the rim. This giant moon serves as a stark testament to the internal pressures that can warp a world made primarily of ice and silicate rock. The scale of the canyons, such as the massive Messina Chasma, suggests a dramatic geological history that has since frozen into a permanent silent display. To look upon Titania is to see a world that has been pulled and pushed from within, its very skin stretched to the breaking point by the cooling of its hidden core. It floats in the black space as a scarred and battered monarch, overseeing the lesser shards of its celestial family. The contrast of these deep, dark trenches against the pale, reflective ice of the plains creates a visual rhythm of shadow and light that is both beautiful and terrifying. If we were to look closer at the most enigmatic member of this family, we would find Miranda, a world that defies every law of geological symmetry. Though it is the smallest of the 5 major satellites, its landscape is easily the most tortured and bizarre architecture in the known solar system. Great patchwork regions known as coronae appear as giant grooved ovals, looking as if the moon were violently smashed apart in a catastrophic collision and then reassembled haphazardly by a confused gravity. Astronomers view Miranda as a living laboratory of extreme planetary evolution, where the forces of impact and tidal heating have been pushed to their absolute limits. It is a world of chaos frozen in time, a whispering moon that tells a story of total destruction followed by a miraculous, albeit messy, rebirth. Every cliff and ridge is a reminder that the universe does not always favour order, often creating its most interesting works through sheer, unbridled accident. This cosmic structure on Miranda reaches a terrifying peak at Verona Rupes, the tallest known cliff face discovered across the entirety of our planetary neighbourhood. These staggering ice cliffs tower over 20 kilometres high, a vertical drop so immense it dwarfs the highest peaks of the Himalayas or the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans. If a person were to step off the edge into the void, the moon's exceptionally weak gravity would allow them to fall for over 10 minutes in a slow-motion descent before finally striking the base. As your body rests heavily and peacefully against your current surface, feel the profound stillness of your own weight compared to that impossible, frozen plunge. The sheer scale of this cliff is almost impossible for the human mind to grasp, a sheer wall of ice rising into the black sky, catching only the dimmest glint of the distant sun. It is a place of absolute verticality, where the boundary between the solid ground and the empty space is a sharp, terrifying line. The silence of such a drop, occurring in a world without wind or sound, adds to the dreamlike quality of the landscape. Verona Rupes stands as a grand monument to the geological power of ice, a towering sentinel guarding the secrets of the moon's shattered, icy heart. Standing at the base of this wall, one would feel the crushing weight of billions of years of history looming overhead in the dark. Surprisingly, amidst the dark and battered companions, Ariel shines with a brilliant youthful radiance that demands the observer's attention. As the brightest of the major moons, its surface is coated in relatively fresh, highly reflective water ice that gleams like a polished diamond against the black canvas of space. Long, deep valleys and winding ridges crisscross the terrain, suggesting a history of intense geological activity that paved over the oldest craters with new, frozen flows. This reflective quality gives Ariel an almost pearlescent glow, making it a stark, luminous beacon in the dim twilight of the outer system. The moon's surface appears much younger than its counterparts, indicating that its interior remained active and warm long after others had gone cold. This activity, likely fueled by tidal interactions with the parent planet, acted as a cosmic fountain of youth, constantly renewing the crust with fresh material. To see Ariel is to witness a world that refused to grow old quietly, instead choosing to mask its scars with a dazzling coat of bright new frost. It provides a sharp visual break from the ancient dusty surfaces found elsewhere, reminding us that renewal is possible even in the deepest freeze. The play of light across its ridged plains creates a texture of brilliance that is unmatched in the local orbital neighbourhood, a bright whisper in the dark. Umbriel, in stark contrast, offers a grim and ancient face that seems to swallow the very light of the distant sun. It is the darkest of the major satellites, covered in a primitive crust that has remained largely unchanged for billions of years, a record of the earliest days of our solar system. Yet, even in this kingdom of shadow, a mysterious, brilliant feature known as wonder marks the landscape with a jarring intensity. This bright ring of material, possibly a deposit from a deep-seated impact or a crater filled with fresh frost, stands out like a solitary glowing eye against the charcoal-coloured surface. The presence of wonder serves to highlight the extreme age and darkness of the surrounding terrain, a single spark of light in a world of near-total absorption. Umbriel's surface is heavily pockmarked with craters that overlap and blend into one another, creating a texture of relentless, ancient bombardment. It is a moon that has seen much and changed little, acting as a stoic witness to the passing of eons. The dark material coating its surface remains a subject of intense scientific debate, with theories ranging from primordial dust to internal volcanic venting of dark fluids. Regardless of its origin, the darkness of Umbriel creates a sombre, haunting presence in the orbital swarm, a quiet, dark contrast to the brilliance of its brighter siblings. Deep within the outer reaches of the major system, Oberon orbits as the furthest sentinel of the primary group. Its surface is a testament to the relentless bombardment of the early solar system, carrying a heavily cratered crust that shows almost no signs of recent internal renewal. Curiously, the floors of many of these large craters are sprinkled with an unknown dark material, perhaps volcanic in origin or deposited by long-dead ice volcanoes. Notice the calm, steady rhythm of your breathing and the gentle weight of your limbs as you contemplate this distant, frozen world sitting at the edge of the abyss. Oberon is a world of ancient, cold memories, its mountains rising high into the darkness, some reaching heights of 6 kilometers above the surrounding plains. It exists in a state of perpetual icy solitude, orbiting so far from the planet that it barely feels the warmth of its gravitational embrace. The moon's history is written in the density of its craters, a chronological map of every impact it has suffered since its formation. It stands as a silent guard at the gates of the deep system, its dark-bottomed craters looking like ink spills on a frozen parchment. To study Oberon is to look back into the deepest history of the outer planets, where the scars of the past are never healed and the black space is ever present. Most of the inner satellites are composed of a remarkably consistent equal mixture of water ice and dense silicate rock. This balanced recipe creates a family of worlds that are surprisingly dense for their small size, hiding rocky hearts beneath their frost-bitten skins. The ratio suggests these moons formed from a uniform disk of debris that once swirled around the planet after its initial violent formation. This composition provides them with just enough structural integrity to maintain their jagged, cratered forms over many eons of cosmic history. These moons are essentially giant, dirty snowballs with stony cores, a composition that allows them to behave in ways both rigid and fluid over geological time. Under the right conditions, the ice can flow like a slow-moving glacier, while the rock provides the backbone for towering mountains and deep valleys. The internal structure of these moons reflects the conditions of the early solar system, where volatile gases and solid minerals came together to form the building blocks of worlds. This mix of ice and rock also influences how they reflect sunlight, and how they respond to the gravitational pulls of their neighbours. They are the sturdy workhorses of the orbital system, simple in their makeup but complex in their history and their influence on the dark space around them. Orbital resonances between these icy bodies act as invisible, gravitational tethers that constantly tug and pull at their frozen structures in a complex celestial dance. As the moons pass one another in their calculated paths, their mutual attraction periodically stretches and squeezes their interiors like a slow, rhythmic, cosmic bellows. This tidal flexing generates friction and heat deep within the crusts, perhaps keeping their subterranean depths slightly warmer than the absolute zero of the surface. These whispering interactions are the hidden engine of the system, preventing the moons from becoming entirely dead, static blocks of ice. This subtle heating can trigger the movement of ice deep below the surface occasionally leading to the cryovolcanic activity that refreshes the landscape of worlds. It is a gentle, persistent force that ensures the system remains geologically alive, even if only in the most muted and slow-motion ways. The resonance is a testament to the interconnectedness of all things in space, where the movement of one body inevitably impacts the state of another. Without this constant gravitational massage, the moons would be entirely frozen remnants, but with it, they remain dynamic participants in the planet's ongoing story. It is a whisper of energy that keeps the cold at bay, a secret warmth shared among the companions of the dark space. Ultimately, despite the grand drama and geological diversity on display, the entire satellite system contains remarkably little physical mass when compared to the rest of the solar system. If every one of the nearly 30 moons were combined into a single sphere, they would altogether weigh less than half of Earth's own moon. This realization highlights the incredible efficiency of gravity, crafting vast canyons, towering cliffs, and mysterious rings from such a limited supply of cosmic matter. It is a fragile, lightweight kingdom of ice and shadow, dancing effortlessly in the deep dark of the outer solar system. The sheer variety of landscapes found across these moons is out of all proportion to their collective size, proving that even a small amount of material can create a universe of wonder. This mass deficiency also explains why the moons have such little gravitational influence on the parent planet, even as they are entirely controlled by its massive pull. They are like a cloud of tiny, intricate clockwork pieces spinning around a central silent motor in the black void. To understand this system is to appreciate the power of the small and the delicate, where a handful of ice and rock can create a story that spans billions of years. It is a grand synthesis of minimal matter and maximum drama, a final whispering note in the cold, silent theatre of the cratered moons. The cold, silent theatre of the cratered moons serves as a mere prelude to the profound, heavy secrets held within the planet's vast and lightless interior. Deep beneath the serene azure gas clouds, the environment transitions into a colossal, churning mantle that defies every earthly expectation of planetary structure. Rather than a foundation of solid, unyielding rock, this middle layer is a boundless expanse of incredibly dense, hot fluid that flows with a slow and terrifying momentum. This subterranean ocean moves in massive silent currents, driven by internal heat and the planet's relentless sideways rotation. It represents a hidden, fluid world that serves as the true heart of the ice giant, anchoring the atmosphere above while concealing the core below. The sheer scale of this liquid mantle is staggering, comprising a significant portion of the planet's total volume and creating a realm where the very concept of ground is entirely absent. This cosmic structure is a complex exotic chemical brew consisting primarily of water, ammonia and methane, all compressed into states of matter that exist nowhere else in our familiar experience. Within these deep layers, the matter is subjected to the crushing pressurized weight of millions of times the atmospheric pressure found at sea level on Earth. This extreme force compacts the molecular structure of the compounds until they become thick, syrupy, and incredibly dense. Every cubic centimetre of this deep mantle weighs far more than any liquid we know, creating a world of oppressive total confinement. The pressure is so immense that it blurs the line between liquid and solid, forcing the atoms into a state where they are simultaneously fluid yet remarkably rigid. Floating through such an environment would be impossible, as the weight of the overhead ocean would instantly pulverize any known material into its base components. Surprisingly, despite the planet's official classification as an ice giant, the interior of this world is intensely hot, harboring a reservoir of energy that reaches several thousand degrees. This heat is a lingering remnant of the planet's violent formation and the subsequent gravitational collapse that pulled its matter together in the early solar system. While the outer cloud tops are famously the coldest in the neighbourhood, the deep mantle is a boiling, hyper-pressurized cauldron of thermal energy. This massive temperature gradient between the frigid exterior and the scalding interior creates a complex system of heat transfer that drives the slow, churning motion of the liquid layers. It is a world of extreme contradictions, where the biting cold of the vacuum is balanced by a core that glows with the intensity of a subterranean furnace. The heat ensures that the substances within the planet remains in a permanent fluid state, never allowed to truly freeze despite the vast distances from the sun. The specialized term ice in this context refers not to the frozen cubes we might find on Earth, but to the heavier elements and compounds that distinguish this world from the gas giants. In planetary science, ices describe substances like water, ammonia, and methane that exist as solids or high-density fluids in the outer reaches of a star system. These materials are significantly heavier and more complex than the light hydrogen and helium that dominate the atmospheres of planets like Jupiter. As you feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest in the quiet of this moment, consider how even the heavier substances can flow like water under the right pressure. This distinction is crucial for understanding why this world is so much denser and structurally different from its larger, gassier neighbours. While the outer layers may look like a gas world, the majority of the planet's bulk is made of these heavy, compressed volatiles. A small rocky core sits at the very epicenter of this vast fluid ocean, serving as the planet's ultimate gravitational anchor. Comprising roughly half the mass of our entire home planet, this core is a compact sphere of dense silicates and metals that were among the first materials to coalesce billions of years ago. It is subjected to the absolute maximum pressure the planet can generate, a weight so profound that the rock itself is likely in a state of high-temperature plasticity. This central seed provided the gravitational pull necessary to attract the massive layers of ice and gas that now wrap around it in a thick protective shroud. Though it is small in comparison to the planet's total size, its mass is the silent engine that holds the entire system together. It remains the most isolated place in the system, buried beneath thousands of miles of crushing superheated fluid. Within the deepest reaches of the mantle, the extreme, unyielding pressure begins to perform miracles of subatomic physics on the very water molecules themselves. The force is so great that it physically strips electrons from the oxygen and hydrogen atoms, allowing them to flow freely through the dense fluid like a river of electricity. This creates a bizarre and highly conductive state of matter known as superionic water, where the oxygen atoms form a rigid lattice, while the hydrogen ions drift between them like a liquid. In this state, the water acts as both a solid and a liquid simultaneously, exhibiting properties that would seem magical in any other environment. This superionic layer is incredibly hot and glows with a dull internal light, creating a conductive shell that completely surrounds the inner core. It is a fundamental transformation of the most basic substance of life into a metallic, glowing conductor of planetary power. Currents within this electrically charged superionic ocean slosh and churn with a slow, deliberate power, acting as a massive planetary dynamo. As the planet rolls on its side, these conductive fluids move in complex, turbulent patterns, generating the vast and erratic magnetic field that surrounds the world. This internal motion is the source of the invisible forces that protect the atmosphere from the solar wind and create the strange, off-center auroras. Notice the stillness of your own body, a sharp contrast to the restless churning currents of power deep within the ice giant's heart. The energy for this dynamo comes from the internal heat rising from the core, which forces the heavy metallic water to circulate in massive convective cells. This is a world of silent subterranean electricity, where the very ocean itself acts as a gargantuan generator. Instead, a visitor would simply sink deeper and deeper into a realm of increasing density and darkness, moving from a misty fog into a syrupy, high-pressure abyss. This lack of a solid crust makes the planet a truly alien environment, a world defined entirely by fluid dynamics and gravitational gradients. It is an ocean with no bottom and an atmosphere with no base, a continuous vertical journey through changing states of matter. descending further into this lightless abyss would mean facing a crushing, absolute darkness where matter behaves in ways that are currently impossible to replicate perfectly in any laboratory on Earth. Despite our most advanced high-pressure laser experiments, the specific combination of extreme heat and multi-million atmosphere pressure found here remains beyond our reach. We can only theorize about the strange phases of ammonia and methane that might exist in these deep, unreachable zones, where chemistry itself is rewritten by the weight of the world. As your limbs grow even heavier and more relaxed, let your mind drift into that silent, pressurized dark, where even the atoms are forced to change their shape. In this hidden realm, carbon might form into exotic lattices or liquids, and methane could break down into its base components to create entirely new minerals. It is the ultimate frontier of planetary science, a place where our physical models are pushed to their breaking point. Ultimately, this hidden, boundless ocean locks away the vast majority of the planet's total mass, remaining a permanent mystery to any form of direct observation. We cannot see through the thick, methane-choked atmosphere to witness the churning currents or the glowing supersonic layers beneath. Our entire understanding of this deep interior is built on the subtle clues of gravitational measurements and magnetic field readings taken from a distance. The planet holds its mass tightly within its heart, guarding the secrets of its formation and the true nature of its rocky core. It is a world that is 90% hidden, a massive liquid enigma that floats silently in the outer dark. This vast interior ocean is the true identity of the planet, a lightless, crushing reservoir of ancient history and exotic physics that we may never truly touch. That 90% hidden world, drifting as a massive and liquid enigma through the outer dark, generates an invisible architecture that is perhaps the most bizarre feature of the entire planetary system, a magnetic field that refuses to follow any traditional celestial map or the orderly alignment of its peers. A deeply unusual magnetic field surrounds the planet, but it does not align with the world's centre or its already tilted rotational axis, instead shifting away from the geometric middle by a third of the planet's radius and tilting at a staggering 59 degrees. This misalignment creates a lopsided, asymmetrical shield that tumbles through space as the planet rolls, producing a chaotic protective envelope that distorts the incoming solar currents into a tangled knot of invisible energy that wears its magnetic influence like a poorly fitted slipping mask. Because of this radical displacement and extreme tilt, the magnetic North Pole does not reside at the top of the world, but instead lies near the equator, creating a lopsided, wobbling magnetic bubble that defies every earthly convention of navigation. As the planet performs its sideways roll along its orbital path, this displaced magnetic field creates a rhythmic pulsation in the surrounding space, causing the magnetosphere to expand and contract with a violent, uneven frequency. If you were to navigate this realm with a traditional compass, the needle would spin in a maddening, unpredictable carousel as the very definition of north and south shifts across the azure clouds with every passing hour of the planet's rapid rotation. Deep within the planetary interior, scientists attribute this profound magnetic anomaly to the specific turbulent region where the field is generated, located within the shallow fluid mantle, rather than deep inside a solid metallic core. While the magnetic fields of Earth or Jupiter are born from the churning of heavy, iron-rich hearts, this ice giant utilizes the conductive, electrically charged supersonic fluids of its middle layers to spark its invisible shield. This unique mechanism ensures that the magnetic lines of force emerge in a tangled, multipolar mess rather than a neat and symmetrical dipole, reflecting the chaotic and restless currents of the pressurized water and ammonia ocean hidden beneath the methane smog. As the planet rotates on its side, the magnetic field tumbles wildly through the vacuum, performing a complex and dizzying aerial maneuver that effectively opens and closes invisible pathways, for solar wind particles to enter and exit the upper atmosphere at unpredictable intervals. This constant motion transforms the magnetosphere into a cosmic revolving door, where the protective barrier alternately captures and deflects the sun's charged breath in a pulsating rhythm that is unique in the solar system. Feel the steady, heavy weight of your shoulders as you contemplate this massive, invisible door swinging through the dark, letting the solar wind brush momentarily against the silent blue clouds before being pushed away once more into the void. The magneto-tail, a vast stream of charged particles trailing behind the planet, like a ghostly, energetic cape, is twisted into a massive and mesmerizing corkscrew shape that stretches for millions of kilometers into the darkness. This spiraling structure is a direct and dramatic consequence of the planet's lopsided magnetic field spinning rapidly while being buffeted by the horizontal flow of the solar wind, creating a gargantuan, invisible braid of energy. Instead of a straight and trailing wake, the planet leaves behind a monumental winding signature in the interstellar medium, a spiraling testament to its eccentric and sideways passage through the freezing reaches of the outer solar system. Surprisingly, auroras do occur within this lightless and chaotic magnetic environment, but they appear as isolated bright spots and fleeting patches of light that erupt far away from the geographic poles, defying the standard planetary behaviour observed on every other world. Because the magnetic field lines enter the atmosphere at such bizarre and off-centre angles, the glowing curtains of green and red are not confined to the traditional polar rings, but can manifest anywhere from the equator to the mid-latitudes. These ghostly, localized flashes dance across the pale blue clouds like disconnected and unpredictable embers, momentarily illuminating the methane haze with an ethereal glow that has no earthly counterpart. If we were to look closer at the invisible belts of energy surrounding this world, we would find radiation zones that trap electrons and protons within the magnetic field, though these regions are surprisingly weak and sparse compared to the deadly, high-energy zones surrounding Jupiter. The planet's erratic magnetic tumbles prevent charged particles from settling into stable or concentrated orbits, effectively scattering the radiation into a thin and harmless electric fog before it can become a lethal threat to passing observers. This creates a remarkably clean magnetosphere where the intensity of the trapped particles is muted, allowing the planet to drift through the void without the harsh, crackling radiation that plagues its more massive and upright neighbours. Notice the silence of your current space and the stillness of your limbs as you consider the strange and silent absence of plasma that was detected in the inner magnetosphere, a hollow void that remains a profound and unsolved mystery to this day. When the first robotic eyes pierced this magnetic maze, they found an inexplicable lack of the hot ionized gas typically found, crowding the interiors of large planetary magnetic fields, as if the planet's magnetic tumble acts as a giant centrifugal pump flinging matter outward. This void creates a quiet, empty region near the planet where the expected buzzing of cosmic particles falls completely silent, leaving a pocket of pristine vacuum within the heart of the invisible storm. Ultimately, understanding this tangled and eccentric magnetic field forces modern astrophysicists to completely rethink how dynamos operate within planets made of pressurized ice and supercritical fluids, shattering old assumptions about the origins of planetary magnetism. The discovery that a lopsided and off-center field can be generated by the motion of salty metallic water in a shallow mantle reveals a level of exotic physics that was previously unimagined in the history of science. As you sink into the final depths of relaxation, realize that this magnetic maze is a silent witness to a world that refuses to be ordinary, guarding its azure heart with a shield of invisible tumbling fire. The tumbling fire of the magnetosphere eventually yields to a more profound and quiet reality, a lonely crawl through the absolute outer darkness that defines the planet's vast residency. Travelling at an average distance of roughly 2.8 billion kilometres from the Sun, This world resides in the dim, frozen outskirts of the solar system, where the very touch of the star begins to fail. It is a realm characterized by an immense chilling separation from the inner worlds of rock and warmth. In this distant province, the planetary journey takes place far beyond the reaches where sunlight feels like a familiar, comforting presence. The distance is so great that light itself seems tired by the time it reaches the aquamarine clouds, having travelled across a vacuum that swallows the majority of its heat. This extreme isolation ensures the planet remains a sentinel of the deep dark, a world that exists on the very edge of the sun's gravitational and luminous grip. To cross this distance from Earth would require a voyage spanning years of silent transit through the blackness of the void. It is a location that forces the mind to reconsider the scale of our cosmic neighbourhood, transforming the sun into a remote and dwindling memory. Out here, the planet drifts in a state of perpetual quiet exile, far removed from the bustling activity of the inner celestial spheres. This distant sun lacks the power to banish the shadows, leaving the atmosphere in a permanent state of deep, cold dusk. Even at the height of the long polar summer, the light is so weak that it fails to provide the convective energy seen on closer giant worlds, contributing to the planet's eerie, featureless calm. The sky remains a star-studded velvet canopy even at noon, as the feeble solar glare is insufficient to wash out the distant, twinkling lights of the galaxy. If we were to stand atop the hazy cloud deck, we would see a landscape defined by an oppressive and beautiful dimness. This is a world where the day is indistinguishable from a moonlit night, a place where the sun is merely a distant lighthouse in an endless ocean of shadow. The sheer lack of light reinforces the sensation of being adrift at the very edge of the cosmic map. Completing a single, sweeping orbit around the sun requires 84 Earth years, a journey so vast and slow that it defines the rhythm of entire human lifetimes. This orbital duration is so immense that since the planet's initial discovery by humanity, only a few complete circuits have ever been observed and recorded. It moves with a heavy, deliberate pace, as if the gravity of the distant sun is only just enough to keep it from wandering away into the interstellar dark. For those of us on Earth, the passage of decades represents a significant span of history and change. Yet for this ice giant, it is merely the turning of a single season. A person could be born, live a full and vibrant life, and pass away before the planet has even finished one of its lonely laps around the star. This creates a temporal scale that is almost impossible to grasp, where the planet operates on a clock that ticks in centuries rather than years. Gazing at the orbital track of this world forces a shift in perspective, moving away from the frenetic speed of the inner planets toward a state of cosmic patience. It is a slow-motion dance through the vacuum, a silent and unending carousel that proceeds with the inevitability of the stars. The world is a permanent fixture of the outer darkness, moving so slowly that it seems almost stationary against the background of the void. The path the planet takes is not a perfect circle, but a wide elliptical track that causes its distance from the sun to vary by roughly 270 million kilometers throughout its long year. This massive oscillation in distance means the world experiences subtle, rhythmic shifts in the amount of solar energy it receives over the course of decades. As it swings toward its perihelion, the sun grows slightly brighter, and the atmosphere stirs with the faint promise of warmth. Then, the planet begins its long, slow retreat back toward the darkest reaches of its orbit, pulling away into the deepest cold of the solar system. This 270 million kilometer variance is a distance greater than the entire gap between Earth and the Sun, yet for this giant it is merely a minor fluctuation in its vast journey. The elliptical nature of the orbit ensures that the planet's environment is never truly static, even if the changes occur with glacial slowness. Notice the stillness of your own resting form as you contemplate this massive, heavy world drifting through a gap larger than our own home's entire existence. This rhythmic expansion and contraction of the orbital distance act as a slow cosmic pulse, a heartbeat that takes nearly a century to complete. It is a journey of constant, subtle change, a world perpetually falling toward and then pulling away from the light. Surprisingly, despite its massive size, the planet is one of the slowest moving objects in the solar system, moving at an average speed of only 6.8 kilometers per second. This is a plodding, measured pace compared to the frantic speeds of the inner rocky worlds, which race around the Sun with far more energy. Plodding along its massive orbital track, the ice giant seems to labour through the darkness, held back by the sheer distance it must cover. This lack of velocity is a consequence of its extreme distance from the Sun's gravitational centre, where the pull of the star is a faint, stretching influence. At this speed, the planet is barely moving fast enough to maintain its orbit, a delicate balance between the momentum of its birth and the relentless tug of the Sun. It is a slow-motion transit that emphasises the vast, empty scales of the outer solar system, where movement is measured in years rather than hours. To watch the planet from a distance would be to see a world that appears to be standing still, a majestic and frozen sphere lost in a crawl through the void. This sluggish movement contributes to the planet's reputation as a quiet and dormant world, a place where even the passage of time seems to have been chilled into a slow, heavy rhythm. It is a world that takes its time, a patient wanderer in the deep black. When the musician and astronomer William Herschel first pointed his handmade telescope toward the sky in 1781, he could not have known he was about to shatter the ancient boundaries of the known universe. In a single night of meticulous observation, he identified a wandering point of light that did not behave like the distant fixed stars. This discovery effectively doubled the known size of the solar system in a single night, pushing the frontier of our cosmic map into a region previously thought to be empty and unreachable. Before this moment, the solar system ended at the visible rings of Saturn, a boundary that had stood since the dawn of human civilization. Herschel's realization that a whole other giant world lurked in the darkness changed the fundamental scale of human ambition and scientific inquiry. It was a victory of patience and precision, proving that the outer dark held massive secrets still waiting for a keen eye to find them. This event marked the first time a planet was discovered using a telescope, marking a sharp transition from the era of naked-eye astronomy to the age of technological exploration. The sudden expansion of the heavens forced everyone to rethink the possibilities of what might lie even further beyond the new horizon. It transformed the solar system from a closed, familiar garden into a vast, unfolding wilderness of ice and gas. This immense gravity, though distant from the Sun, still exerts a subtle and persistent pull on neighbouring planetary bodies, acting as an invisible hand in the darkness. Long after its discovery, astronomers noticed that the planet's orbit was being perturbed by a ghostly unseen force, as if something even further out was tugging at its aquamarine skirts. This effect eventually led mathematicians to predict the existence of Neptune, using only the laws of gravity to map the location of a world they could not yet see. The planet acts as a gravitational bridge between the known gas giants and the mysterious depths of the outer system. Its presence is felt across billions of kilometers, a heavy mass that dictates the movement of everything within its reach. It is part of a complex, interlocking web of gravitational forces that keeps the entire solar system in a state of precarious, beautiful balance. As you feel the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of your breath, consider the invisible tethers that connect all things in the vastness of space. Even in the profound isolation of the outer orbit, the planet is never truly alone, held in a constant dialogue with its distant neighbours. It is a world that speaks through the language of mass and motion, a silent partner in the grand architecture of the heavens. The surrounding region of space where this world drifts is incredibly empty, a vast and lonely vacuum separating the vibrant realms of the gas giants from the chaotic debris of the Kuiper Belt. It is a lonely province where the density of matter drops to almost zero, leaving the planet to navigate a void that is billions of kilometers wide. This space is so devoid of features that it acts as a cosmic buffer, isolating the ice giant from the rest of the solar system's activity. Crossing this empty expanse would reveal a silence so profound it becomes a physical presence, a lack of sound and matter that is absolute. There are no nearby moons or asteroids to break the monotony of the blackness, only the distant twinkle of the sun and the stars. This void reinforces the planet's status as a solitary wanderer, a world that has carved out its own kingdom in the most desolate part of the solar system. To exist in this region is to be a master of the vacuum, a world that has adapted to the extreme scarcity of the outer dark. It is a place of pure, unadulterated space, where the distances are so great that even light feels like a rare and precious visitor. This emptiness is the true home of the ice giant, a quiet and boundless stage for its slow, sideways dance. Radio signals sent from Earth take roughly 2.5 hours just to reach a spacecraft orbiting this distant world, a delay that turns every communication into a ghost of the past. This chasm is so vast that light itself, the fastest thing in the universe, is slow to a crawl by the sheer scale of the separation. Every command sent to a probe in this region is a message to a world that existed hours ago, and every response is an echo of events that have already long passed. This communication lag creates a profound sense of isolation for any robotic explorer venturing into the outer dark. The spacecraft must be incredibly autonomous, capable of making its own decisions and solving its own problems without the luxury of real-time human intervention. The 2.5-hour silence is a constant reminder of the physical barrier that the universe places between us and the furthest reaches of our home. Gaze into the darkness and imagine the patience required to bridge such a gap, a slow and steady exchange of information across the abyss. It is a dialogue that requires immense dedication, a flickering line of radio waves that carries the hopes and dreams of a distant humanity into the unknown. The time lag is the price we pay for exploring the fringes of the sun's influence, a measure of the true depth of the solar system. Ultimately, this immense isolation acts as a massive and silent time capsule, preserving the primordial materials that formed the outer solar system billions of years ago. Because the planet is so far removed from the heat and radiation of the inner system, its chemical makeup has remained largely unchanged since its birth in the early solar nebula. It is a frozen record of the conditions that existed when the planets were first beginning to coalesce from the dust and gas of a young sun. To study this world is to look back into the deepest history of our cosmic origins, a window into a time of violent creation and cold assembly. The heavy elements and volatile gases held within its interior are the same building blocks that constructed the foundations of our own world. This preservation is a gift of the distance, a consequence of the cold and the dark that has kept the planet in a state of primordial stasis. As you sink into the final, peaceful depths of this journey, consider the ancient stories locked within the azure heart of the distant giant. It stands as a silent witness to the beginning of all things, a world that has held onto its secrets for eons in the quiet of the outer orbit. It is a place of profound memory and enduring peace, a time capsule floating forever in the stars. Floating forever in those silent stars, the outer piece of the planet is sharply interrupted by a frantic hidden world, tucked dangerously close to the azure cloud tops. Beyond the majestic rings and the distant storied moons, a collection of tiny, irregularly shaped inner satellites dart through incredibly crowded orbits. These small, rocky shards navigate a chaotic corridor where gravity is a fickle master, weaving between one another with an erratic, unpredictable buzzing. Unlike the spherical perfection of the larger moons, these objects are jagged fragments, looking more like captured asteroids or pulverized rubble than finished worlds. They inhabit a high-traffic zone where the sheer proximity of so many bodies creates a landscape of perpetual kinetic tension. This internal swarm represents a buzzing hive of activity, hidden within the broader serenity of the ice giant's domain. Each tiny rock is a participant in a high-speed orbital game, tracing complex paths through the darkness. The sheer volume of these objects creates a visual texture of erratic motion, a sharp contrast to the slow, heavy movement of the outer system. To observe them is to witness the frantic, hidden machinery that powers the immediate surroundings of the giant. Portia dominates this inner crowd as the largest of the irregular satellites, asserting her presence as a gravitational bully that constantly perturbs the paths of her smaller neighbours. Her mass is just significant enough to send ripples through the surrounding orbital space, nudging smaller rocks out of their intended trajectories. As she sweeps through her path, the invisible fingers of her gravity reach out to tug at the orbits of Bianca, Desdemona, and Rosalind, forcing them into a state of perpetual adjustment. This constant meddling ensures that no orbit in this region remains perfectly stable for long, as Portia's heavy influence acts as a persistent source of orbital friction. The smaller moons are trapped in a restless dance, forever reacting to the lead of their larger, more aggressive sister. This hierarchy of power within the swarm creates a volatile environment where the movement of one body inevitably dictates the fate of several others. It is a subtle but relentless display of celestial dominance, played out in the dim light of the distant sun. Portia acts as the unintentional conductor of a chaotic orchestra, her every move creating a cascade of orbital consequences for the tiny worlds that share her space. This dominance defines the character of the inner system, where the strong perpetually reshape the paths of the weak. Surprisingly, the intricate orbits of these inner moons are highly unstable, suggesting that the current arrangement is merely a fleeting temporary configuration in the planet's vast history. Mathematical simulations reveal that these tiny worlds are locked in a chaotic struggle for survival, with their paths shifting and wobbling over relatively short geological timescales. The gravitational interplay between the moons, the rings, and the planet's own lopsided mass creates a tug-of-war that prevents any long-term equilibrium. What we observe today is a snapshot of a system in flux, a momentary pause in a much longer process of orbital rearrangement. Within just a few million years, the map of this inner space will likely be unrecognizable, as moons drift into new positions or vanish entirely. This instability highlights the dynamic, ever-changing nature of the ice giant's immediate surroundings, proving that even the largest structures are subject to the whims of orbital mechanics. As you rest there, notice the stillness of your own hands compared to the frantic, unstable jitter of these distant rocks. The planet's inner realm is a place of perpetual transition, where the only constant is the inevitability of change. This instability serves as a profound cosmic reminder that the solar system is not a static gallery, but a living, evolving entity. Deep within the heart of this crowded corridor, computer models predict a violent destiny for the moons Desdemona and Cressida, which are fated to collide and shatter within a few million years. Their orbits are currently so close and so poorly synchronized that a catastrophic intersection is mathematically inevitable. This impending doom hangs over them as they continue their silent trek, unaware that their current proximity is a precursor to total annihilation. The collision will be a spectacle of soundless violence, reducing two unique worlds to a sprawling cloud of dust and jagged splinters. This wreckage will eventually settle into new thin rings, or be reabsorbed by neighbouring moons, effectively erasing these tragic figures from the sky. It is a literal enactment of a cosmic end that has been written in the laws of physics since they first formed. The inevitable impact serves as a stark example of the high-stakes environment found within the planet's inner swarm. Every kilometre they travel brings them closer to a final, shattering embrace that will redefine the local orbital landscape for eons to come. This future catastrophe is already being calculated in the present, a silent promise of destruction in the dark. Sharing a similarly doomed trajectory, the tiny moons Cupid and Belinda engage in a dangerous dance that brings them perilously close to one another with every passing month. Their orbits are entangled in such a way that they often skim past each other, separated by only a few hundred kilometres of empty space. This proximity is a constant threat, as even a minor gravitational disturbance could nudge them into a final, crushing embrace. Each close encounter is a heartbeat in a long-term countdown toward disaster, a rhythmic reminder of the fragility of their existence. The sheer speed of their orbits means that any impact would be instantaneous and absolute, leaving behind nothing but a fresh scar on the face of the inner system. They represent the most extreme end of the orbital tension found within the swarm, two small bodies living on the absolute edge. Feel the grounding weight of your body, a singular and solid presence in contrast to the shattered, reforming fragments of the outer dark. Their relationship is a study in precariousness, a testament to the chaotic forces that govern the space just above the azure clouds. They are a haunting reminder that in the crowded inner space, even a shared path is often a collision course. This tightly packed system represents much more than a collection of rocks. It is a chaotic, ongoing process of destruction and eventual reaccretion that has likely repeated many times. The inner moons we see today are almost certainly the children of previous collisions, born from the debris of larger, ancient bodies that were torn apart by these very same orbital instabilities. Over millions of years, the pulverized remains of shattered worlds slowly clump together under their own weak gravity, forming new, jagged satellites. This means the inner swarm is a recycled landscape, a cemetery where the dead provide the building blocks for the living. It is a fascinating display of cosmic recycling, where the energy of an impact is eventually balanced by the slow, patient work of gravitational gathering. The history of this space is not a linear progression from birth to death, but a circular loop of breaking and mending. The swarm is a living testament to the persistence of matter, constantly breaking and reforming in the cold light of the sun. It suggests that the planet's immediate neighbourhood is far more active and resilient than its calm appearance would ever suggest. This cycle of ruin and rebirth ensures that the inner system is never truly empty, but always full of the ghosts of previous worlds. Mab stands out as a tiny dark sentinel within this swarm, a moon that single-handedly sustains the faint outermost Mu ring through a process of constant erosion. This small battered world is perpetually pelted by high-speed micrometeorites, which blast fine dust and icy shards from its unprotected surface into the surrounding void. This ejected material does not fall back to the moon, but instead spreads out to form a diaphanous, glowing halo. Mab is essentially a bleeding world, sacrificing its own mass to feed the architecture of the rings in a selfless display of celestial maintenance. Without this continuous replenishment from the moon's surface, the Mu ring would quickly fade and vanish, swallowed by the immense empty spaces of the system. This relationship between a single small moon and a massive ring structure highlights the intricate interdependency of the ice giant's features. As your breathing remains deep and steady, imagine the vast, silent calculations required to track these buzzing specks through the dark. This cycle of erosion and creation is a quiet, tireless process that defines the very edges of the inner orbital realm. It is a masterpiece of small-scale physics, where one tiny rock dictates the presence of a vast and beautiful ring. This constant drain means the rings are not static features, but temporary rivers of matter that are always being emptied and refilled. The dust we see today is merely a passing guest, a fleeting part of a massive atmospheric conveyor belt that moves matter from the moons into the planet's heart. It is a cycle that operates on a scale of centuries, a slow and steady consumption of the satellite system. It is a reminder that even the most distant structures are intimately connected to the planet they call home, bound by the invisible friction of the gas. This dynamic interplay between the gas and the dust ensures that the rings are always fresh, always evolving and always in motion. The planet is a hungry host, slowly drawing the shards of its family into its lightless interior. Observing this miniature, frantic system offers modern astronomers a unique, real-time laboratory for understanding how planetary disks and solar systems evolve and collapse over time. Because the timescales for these collisions and orbital shifts are measured in millions of years rather than billions, The ice giant's inner swarm provides a high-speed version of the processes that formed our own Earth. We can witness the same principles of resonance, accretion, and gravitational perturbation that once dictated the fate of the early solar nebula. By mapping the movements of Portia, Mab, and their doomed siblings, scientists can test their most advanced models of planetary formation in an environment that is still actively changing. It is a bridge across time, allowing us to watch the laws of physics rewrite the history of a world in our own era. The planet becomes a teacher, using its chaotic inner family to reveal the secrets of how order is born. The buzzing swarm is not just a collection of rocks, but a dynamic, high-fidelity simulation of the birth and death of worlds. This accessibility makes the system one of the most valuable resources in the quest to understand our origins. Every observation is a new piece of data in the grand puzzle of how we came to be. These battered survivors of the inner swarms silently narrate a violent history of collisions that have pulverized the inner orbital space into a graveyard of rocky fragments. Each jagged edge and irregular crater on these tiny moons is a scar from an ancient impact, a memory of a time when the swarm was even more crowded and dangerous. They are the remnants of a much larger population of satellites that has been thinned out by the relentless work of orbital mechanics. Their very existence is a testament to the endurance of matter in an environment that is constantly trying to tear it apart. To study these moons is to read a story of survival against impossible odds, where the weak are shattered and the strong are merely waiting their turn. They stand as a final, buzzing testament to the hidden turmoil that lies just beneath the planet's serene blue mask. In the quiet of the outer orbit, they are the voices of a chaotic past, whispering of the violence that shaped the world we see today. The frantic buzzing of the inner system is a haunting echo of a pulverized history, a story of destruction that is far from over. This swarm is the true heartbeat of the planet's immediate neighborhood, a restless and erratic witness to the power of the dark. Methane molecules are essentially crushed out of existence, stripped of their molecular identity by temperatures that rival the surface of a small star. This molecular divorce is driven by pressures that dwarf the weight of any terrestrial ocean, creating a dense chemical fog of liberated elements. It is a fundamental unmaking of the atmosphere, a deep-seated forge where the very building blocks of the world are repurposed for a more glittering destiny. The hydrogen rises back toward the surface, but the carbon is destined for a more profound transformation in the crushing abyss. This process marks the beginning of a descent into a realm where the laws of chemistry are rewritten by the sheer force of gravity. It is the ultimate expression of the planet's hidden pressurized vitality. Once liberated, the carbon atoms find themselves in a realm of absolute compression, seeking a new and more resilient configuration to survive the weight. Under this crushing weight, the atoms bond tightly together in a rigid tetrahedral lattice that defines the hardest substance in existence. Microscopic, solid diamonds begin to crystallize out of the hot fluid soup of the mantle, born in total darkness. They are not the facetted stones of a jeweler's display, but raw, crystalline shards emerging from the chaotic chemical churn. This process creates a hidden, glittering fog of carbon, a subterranean starfield forming within the planet's crushing embrace. Each crystal is a small but absolute victory of order over the surrounding chaos of the fluid mantle. The formation of these gems happens continuously across the entire inner shell, creating a scale of production that is impossible to fathom. This is the birth of the diamond rain, a crystalline phenomenon that exists nowhere else in our familiar experience. It is the planet's way of concentrating its most common elements into its most precious forms. These precious stones do not remain microscopic forever, instead growing with agonizing slowness over vast stretches of time. Over countless millennia, individual crystals accrete more carbon from the surrounding fluid, expanding their structures one atom at a time. Eventually, they become heavy enough to overcome the buoyancy of the superheated liquid mantle and begin a steady, inexorable journey downward. The gentle tug of gravity, which has been their architect, now becomes their guide into the deeper dark as they gain mass. They drift like heavy sparkling snowflakes through a dense and lightless sea, a migration of wealth toward the very heart of the world. This slow-motion descent is a journey of thousands of years, a silent transit through the most pressurized regions of the planet. Notice the weight of your own body resting here, a quiet echo of the steady downward pull that governs the movement of these hidden gems. The descent of the diamonds is a process of inevitable gravitational grace, a slow-motion fall through a boundless ocean. It is the steady heartbeat of the planet's deep chemical life. A continuous slow-motion rain of diamonds characterizes the deep interior, a phenomenon that occurs across the entire circumference of the planet's inner shell. Billions upon billions of these crystalline shards fall in a perpetual glittering shower toward the rocky core. They settle around the central center, forming a thick, shimmering layer of gemstone that wraps the core in a literal crown of diamonds. This subterranean landscape is a realm of impossible beauty, where mountains of crushed diamond gather in a silent, pressurized treasure room. Because the rain never ceases, this layer is constantly growing, fed by the chemical breakdown occurring thousands of kilometers above. It is a geological structure of pure carbon, a monument to the planet's ability to concentrate and refine its own materials. This rain transforms the interior into a sparkling cathedral of high-pressure physics, forever hidden from the gaze of any observer. It is a vast, inaccessible landscape of glitter and weight, a final resting place for the planet's carbon wealth. The scale of this deposit is enough to dwarf the entire history of human mining in an instant. This immense influx of sinking mass does more than just decorate the core. It actively contributes to the planet's internal energy balance. As billions of tons of diamonds plunge through the dense fluid, the friction generated by their descent creates a small but significant amount of internal heat. The gravitational potential energy of the falling stones is converted into thermal energy, subtly warming the deep interior of the mantle. This heating process helps to drive the convection currents that keep the fluid layers in motion, preventing the world from becoming a static, frozen block. It is a self-sustaining cycle where the death of methane molecules provides the kinetic energy to keep the planet's heart beating. Even though the world appears cold on the surface, this mechanical warming provides a hidden pulse of vitality in the dark. The friction of the diamonds is a literal engine of warmth, a mechanical heater fueled by the weight of falling gems. This process ensures that the mantle remains fluid and dynamic, allowing the diamonds to continue their long journey. It is a beautiful synthesis of gravity, chemistry, and heat. Surprisingly, this exotic vision of the interior is not merely a theoretical fantasy, but a reality that has been meticulously confirmed by scientists on Earth. Using high-powered lasers and sophisticated diamond anvil cells, researchers have successfully replicated the extreme pressures and temperatures of the ice giant's mantle. In these tiny, high-energy chambers, they have observed methane gas actually breaking apart and forming microscopic diamonds before their very eyes. This laboratory proof bridges the gap between our distant, rocky home and the alien abyss of the outer solar system. It confirms that the laws of chemistry and physics remain consistent, even in environments that are fundamentally hostile to human life. We no longer have to guess about the nature of the dark. We have built its miniature twin in our own laboratories. As you breathe deeply, take comfort in the fact that our understanding of the universe is grounded in these hard-won empirical truths. The confirmation of the diamond rain is a victory for the human imagination and its ability to pierce the darkness of distant worlds. It is a small spark of clarity in the vast, freezing vacuum. This relentless chemical separation has a profound and visible impact on the composition of the planet's upper atmosphere. By stripping the carbon away and locking it into sinking diamonds, the process effectively depletes the higher cloud layers of this essential element. This explains why the visible clouds, when analysed by our telescopes, are composed almost entirely of methane and ammonia. with a striking absence of more complex carbon-rich haze. The rain acts as a massive planetary filter, sifting the carbon out of the gas and pulling it into the depths. What remains in the sunlight is a simplified chemical shell, a pale and beautiful mask that hides the more complex reality beneath. The azure colour we see from space is the result of a planet that has been meticulously cleaned of its heavier carbon components. Despite the allure of such a vast and hidden wealth of gems, this crystalline treasure remains entirely and permanently inaccessible to human reach. The diamonds are buried beneath thousands of kilometres of supercritical fluid, where the pressures are enough to crush a diamond-coated drill bit into powder. The environment is a toxic soup of ammonia and sulphur, where the chemistry itself would dissolve any probe long before it reached the glittering hoard. Even if a craft could survive the heat and weight, the sheer density of the fluid mantle would make navigation a physical impossibility. This hidden wealth is a sanctuary of the unreachable, protected by the most formidable barriers the natural world can construct. It is a hoard that belongs exclusively to the planet, a secret wealth that will never be touched by the hands of explorers or the greed of empires. The diamonds are destined to remain in their pressurized grave, a shimmering secret at the edge of the sun's reach. This inaccessibility ensures the planet's secrets remain intact, a silent treasure that will never be exploited. It is a world that guards its own riches with the absolute power of its mass. The constant flux of sinking carbon does more than just accumulate wealth. It fundamentally alters the density gradients within the liquid mantle. As the heavy diamonds sink and the lighter hydrogen rises, they create complex ripples in the density of the fluid through which they pass. These variations profoundly affect how the fluid mantle circulates, creating turbulence and eddies that interfere with the planetary dynamo. This shifting density is one of the primary reasons for the chaotic and off-center magnetic field that surrounds the world. The magnetic maze we explored earlier is partially a consequence of this ongoing diamond rain, as the movement of carbon dictates the flow of electricity. It is an intricate web of cause and effect, where the crystallization of a gemstone in the dark can warp the invisible field millions of kilometers away. Notice how still your body is, a calm center in a universe where the movement of a single crystal can change the shape of an entire magnetosphere. The diamond rain is a silent architect of the planet's invisible environment. It is a process that connects the microscopic scale of a crystal lattice to the monumental scale of a planetary magnetic field. Such an exotic phenomenon highlights the radical and absolute difference between terrestrial geology and the extreme chemistry of the outer ice giants. On Earth, geology is a matter of solid plates, rocky volcanoes, and the slow movement of mineral crusts. In this distant realm, however, geology is replaced by a fluid and alien chemistry, where oceans can be metallic and the weather can consist of gemstones. This world forces us to redefine what a planet can be, moving beyond our rocky biases to appreciate the beauty of high-pressure, volatile physics. It is a reminder that the universe is far more creative than our limited experiences on a terrestrial world would lead us to believe. The diamond rain is the ultimate expression of this difference, a process that turns the most common elements into something extraordinary. It is a final, glittering proof that we're only just beginning to understand the true diversity of the celestial neighbourhood. The planet is not just a ball of gas, but a complex and active laboratory of extreme matter. This chemistry is the final, heavy secret of the frozen depths, a story written in diamonds and weight. This story written in diamonds and weight remains locked in a state of thermal hibernation that distinguishes the world from every other giant in the Sun's family. Unlike the turbulent expanses of Jupiter, the majestic golds of Saturn, or even its twin Neptune, this ice giant radiates almost no excess internal heat into the surrounding void. Most of the massive worlds in our neighbourhood are essentially self-luminous in the infrared, glowing with the heat of their own gravitational contraction and primordial birth. Here, however, that internal furnace seems to have been dampened or entirely extinguished, leaving the planet to drift in a state of profound, chilled indifference. This thermal silence is a monumental puzzle for planetary scientists, as a world of this size should naturally leak its inner warmth into the cold of space. Instead, it hovers as a cold, dark sphere, refusing to share its energetic history with the senses of our distant observers. It is a world that has mastered the art of holding its breath, keeping its heat tightly contained within its lightless, pressurized heart. This equilibrium of energy creates a situation where the thermal output of the planet is roughly equal to the meager amount of energy it receives from the distant sun. In the outer solar system, where solar rays are already diluted to a silver twilight, the fact that a giant world produces almost no heat of its own is an extraordinary demonstration of celestial balance. Most giant planets act as net sources of energy, pumping out significantly more heat than they absorb from the star they orbit. This world, however, maintains a near-perfect budget, existing in a state of cryogenic homeostasis that is unique among the four giants. This suggests that the internal machinery of the planet is operating at a far lower intensity than its peers, or that its design is fundamentally more efficient at trapping every last spark of warmth. The resulting environment is one of extreme, unyielding stability, where the temperature of the clouds is dictated almost entirely by the remote flickering sun. It is a world that lives solely on what the universe provides, a giant surviving on crumbs of light in the vast, freezing dark. Surprisingly, the lack of a strong internal heat source explains why the planet possesses the coldest atmospheric tropopause in the entire solar system, a region of absolute biting frost. Located at the boundary between the troposphere and the stratosphere, this layer acts as a cryogenic ceiling that traps the denser gases beneath a wall of unyielding cold. At this specific altitude, temperatures drop to a numbing minus 224 degrees Celsius, a level of chill that even the more distant Neptune cannot match. Without the rising plumes of heat that warm the upper layers of other giants, the air here settles into a state of total thermal exhaustion. This profound cold fundamentally dictates the behavior of the methane haze, forcing it into a dense, opaque blanket that effectively hides the deeper layers of the world. The tropopause is the ultimate filter, a frozen gatekeeper that ensures the planet's internal activity remains a muffled, distant secret. It is a place where the concept of temperature reaches a near-total dead end, creating a sanctuary of stillness in the outer dark. In this azure realm, the lack of a thermal engine means the air remains stagnant and undisturbed, allowing the methane haze to settle into a uniform, serene wash of pale blue. There are no great red spots or dark vortices to break the visual monotony, only an endless, unblemished curve of aquamarine gas. This visual calm is a direct reflection of the thermal silence occurring thousands of kilometers below the surface. The planet wears its inactivity like a mask, presenting a face of total peace to a universe defined by celestial violence. It is a world that has achieved a state of absolute visible rest. Deep within the history of the system, some scientists theorize that the same ancient massive collision that knocked the world onto its side also fundamentally scrambled its interior layers. This catastrophic impact might have permanently disrupted the natural orderly stratification of the planet's mantle and core, preventing internal heat from escaping through traditional convective channels. In a typical giant planet, heat moves efficiently toward the surface in rising plumes, but this internal reorganization may have created a series of dense, stagnant barriers. These scrambled layers act as a gravitational and thermal maze, trapping the primordial warmth of the planet's birth in a lightless, pressurized prison. Instead of flowing outward to stir the atmosphere, the heat is forced to circulate in deep, isolated pockets, effectively insulating the exterior from the core's furnace. This theory suggests that the planet's quiet nature is not a natural state, but the result of a permanent structural injury sustained billions of years ago. The serenity we see today is the scar tissue of a world-breaking impact that fundamentally changed how the giant breathes. Another compelling hypothesis suggests a layer of stagnant liquid deep inside the mantle acts as a massive thermal blanket, trapping the primordial heat near the rocky core. This proposed layer would consist of a dense, heavy mixture of salts and metallic fluids that refuse to participate in the general circulation of the rest of the planet's interior. Much like a heavy lid on a boiling pot, this stagnant region prevents the rising thermal energy from reaching the upper atmosphere where it could drive storm activity. If you were to look closer at the passage of time, you would find that during the rare and distant equinoxes, the planet finally stirs from its long, deep slumber. It is at this specific point in the 84-year orbit that the faint internal heat finally interacts with the direct focused sunlight falling across the equator. This sudden influx of external energy provides just enough of a kick to wake the atmosphere into brief, chaotic periods of storm activity and cloud formation. For a few short years, the featureless blue face is broken by rising white plumes and swirling vortices as the long-trapped heat finally finds a path to the surface. It is as if the giant is taking a single, laboured breath before returning to its decades of silent, frozen sleep. As you feel the steady, reassuring rise and fall of your own chest, imagine the immense patience of a world that only wakes up once every 42 years. These equinoctial storms are a whispered reminder that the planet is not truly dead, only waiting for the light to touch its secret hidden warmth. The quiet nature of the planet makes it a profound outlier in our solar system, a world that defiantly refuses to follow the dynamic, tempestuous behaviour typical of other giant worlds. While Neptune, its near twin in size and composition, is home to some of the fastest winds and most violent storms in the universe, this ice giant remains an enigma of absolute stillness. This contrast is one of the most significant challenges in modern planetary science, as two worlds so similar in makeup should theoretically behave in nearly identical ways. This planet stands as a lone, silent sentinel that challenges our most basic assumptions about how giant atmospheres should operate and evolve. Its refusal to be active is a form of celestial rebellion, a quiet statement of individuality in a neighbourhood defined by roaring gas and swirling lightning. It is the one world that has chosen a path of total, unyielding peace over the chaos of the others. To understand this outlier is to unlock the secrets of how planets can diverge into entirely different fates, despite starting from the same icy seeds. Spacecraft instruments passing through the system detected surprisingly low levels of microwave emissions, further confirming the frozen and inactive state of the deep mantle. These radio wave signatures, which typically reveal the heat and motion occurring deep within a giant planet, were eerily muted and uniform across the entire globe. This data provides the empirical proof that the planet is not just quiet on the outside, but profoundly cold and stagnant in the regions we cannot see. The lack of microwave energy suggests that the thermal convection we see on Jupiter and Saturn is almost entirely absent here, leaving the interior in a state of cryogenic stasis. It is a world that has been silenced at every frequency, a planetary radio station that has gone off the air for billions of years. This data reinforces the image of a world that is fundamentally asleep, a giant that has turned its back on the energetic activity of its peers. The microwave silence is the ultimate confirmation of the planet's status as a quiet, frozen mystery that guards its internal state with absolute resolve. This dormant giant floats through the outer darkness, a serene anomaly holding the ultimate secrets to planetary evolution tight within its frozen heart. It is a world that has survived a world-breaking collision, adopted a bizarre and sideways spin, and retreated into a state of total, thermal hibernation. Every aspect of its quiet existence is a clue to the chaotic and violent history of our solar system, a story that is hidden beneath the pale blue clouds. It stands as a silent witness to the infinite variety of the cosmos, proving that even the most massive worlds can find a state of absolute, enduring rest. As you sink into the final, deepest state of relaxation, feel the presence of this lonely aquamarine orb as a comforting and permanent fixture of the night sky. It is a world that does not demand attention with storms or light, but instead invites a quiet, respectful contemplation of the dark. The sleeper in the dark remains a mystery, a serene and sideways paradox that will guard its secrets for eternity. Uranus is not merely a sideways, silent sphere of ice, but a cosmic vault where chaotic history, extreme chemistry, and frozen time converge into an enduring, tranquil mystery. Uranus is not merely a sideways, silent sphere of ice, but a cosmic vault where chaotic history, extreme chemistry, and frozen time converge into an enduring, tranquil mystery. This quiet room is now your own orbital sanctuary, a place where the vastness of the journey settles into a singular, grounded point of peace. As the distant aquamarine light fades from your mind's eye, your attention shifts naturally to the weight of your own existence. Every small muscle in your feet finds its own state of thermal equilibrium, sinking into the soft support of the surface beneath you. Deep within your awareness, the toes of your left foot begin to release their final hold on the day. This grounding sensation moves slowly upward, pulling the tension from your ankles and calves like a receding tide. Surprisingly, the body has its own way of mimicking the deep pressurized stillness of a world at rest. Your knees and thighs grow heavy, their weight as inevitable and certain as the gravity of a distant giant. As your hips settle into the mattress, you become a fixed point in the dark, a solid mass that no longer needs to move or react. The muscles of your lower back spread outward, finding comfort in the absolute lack of effort required to simply exist. Your breathing remains a slow, rhythmic pulse that connects the internal furnace of your core to the quiet atmosphere of the room. This steady cycle of air is the only movement in an otherwise perfectly still landscape of shadow and rest. If we were to look closer, we would see the tension in your shoulders dissolving into the fabric of the bed. Your arms rest by your sides, heavy as cold stone, with your fingers curling softly into the palm of the hand. The neck releases its burden, allowing the head to be fully supported by the pillow in a state of total, unyielding surrender. Your jaw relaxes, the teeth parting slightly as the tongue rests gently at the bottom of the mouth. Every tiny fibre around the eyes becomes smooth and still, and the forehead softens like silk. The scalp feels light, as if every thought has finally been set down and left behind in the dark. The air in the room is cool and steady, moving in and out with a quiet, natural ease. Your bed is a soft container for this deep peace, a sanctuary where nothing is expected of you. The blanket is a warm, familiar weight that keeps you safe and tucked away from the world outside. This moment is entirely yours, a final refuge where the pulse of the room matches the slow beat of your heart. Everything is quiet, everything is still, and the darkness is a kind and heavy friend. The surface beneath you is unmoving, providing a foundation that will hold you until the light returns. Your limbs have become part of the mattress, sinking into a state where they are indistinguishable from the rest. The mind is a blank, peaceful landscape, free of images and words. You're simply a presence in a quiet room, drifting into the deep, soft fabric of the night. This stillness is absolute and comforting, wrapping around you like a gentle embrace. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.